You are listening to Adoptees On, the podcast where adoptees discuss the adoption experience. This is Season 2, Episode 13, Jessenia. I'm your host, Haley Radke. Well, my friend, I can't believe it. We have reached the end of another whole season of episodes. I have interviewed adoptees who have ideal reunions. I have interviewed an adoptee who was adopted back into her family of origin. I've interviewed adoptees about how they've connected with their siblings. We've heard adoptees share about losing their culture when they were adopted transracially. We heard about an adoptee finding her family via a Facebook poster. We've heard about the devastation and turmoil late discovery adoptees experience. I've spoken to 4 different adoptees who are also therapists about a wide range of adoptee issues and topics. If you missed out on any of the episodes from our first 2 seasons, I'd encourage you to go back and download them, and that will keep you busy for my very, very short break. And I will be back with a brand new season of shows for you on Friday, September 15th. Make sure you're subscribed to the show in your favorite podcatcher like iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Stitcher. We're even on YouTube and iHeartRadio. And then you will be one of the first people to get to listen to Season 3. Today, I have an extended interview with Jessenia Palmer. In this episode, we discuss abandonment, abuse, suicide, and there's some graphic language that may not be suitable for all listeners. So if you're listening around children, make sure to pop those earbuds in right now. As usual, there is no sugarcoating going on in this episode. It's real and raw adoptee talk. Jessenia and I have some great discussions about what we've learned through all the time we've spent working with adoptees. We wrap up with some recommended resources, and links to all of the things we'll be talking about are on the website adopteeson.com. And make sure to stick around to the very, very end of this episode because I have an extra mini interview with a surprise guest. Let's listen in. Well, I'm so pleased to welcome to Adoptees On, Jessenia Palmer. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I know I've followed your work for a really long time, and so have many of my listeners. And I'd love it if you just started and maybe would tell us a little bit about your childhood. I really don't know much about your story, and I'm so curious how you came to work in adoptee land like I do. So let's start at the beginning.
Well, I was abandoned as a baby in New York City. At the house that I was left at, that was actually my adoptive mother's babysitter's house. She cared for my adoptive mom's children, and she presented the woman's house that I was left at. She presented this baby to my mom, which is myself, and she's like, "This woman left this baby at my house. What do I do?" And my mom was like, "Who would leave a child behind like that?" And she's like, "I think that she's a woman from up the street who used to wander the streets and was basically up to no good and often put her babies in harm's way." And my mom was like, "Well, my adoptive mom was like, well, just give her to me. I'll take care of her." And she's like, "But she seems like she's very sick." And my mom, my adoptive mother has always been the type of person that would just take anybody in. So it didn't matter to her that this woman said that I was really sick and that it seemed like maybe there was drugs in my system or something. She's like, I'll take her, I'll take her. And she's like, well, let's just wait around and see if this woman comes back. I think it was about a couple months later before this lady returned, now that my mom actually had me, my adoptive mom had me in her home. My adoptive mom actually ended up meeting my birth mother, but she said that my birth mother wanted nothing to do with me. And that when she was like, "This is your child," she's like, "That's not mine." She kept denying that I was even hers. I carried that that pain for so long. Just I'm trying to imagine someone giving birth to me and denying that I'm even theirs. So yeah, I ended up going to staying with my birth mom's house. I'm sorry, my adoptive mom's house and her husband. And I was a very, very sick child. And they didn't think that I was actually going to survive. And I was in and out of the hospitals for the first 3 years of my life. And they actually ended up changing my name to Miracle. And the doctors told my mom, are you sure that you really want to adopt this child? Because, she may not make it. And obviously, we know adoptions cost money. My mom, she said, if God brought her to me, in this instance, I don't want this baby to be abandoned. I'll take care of her. There's some details that are missing, but that my birth mother ended up coming back because they obviously needed to have some paperwork, something of a signature to say that my adopted mom can keep me because I wasn't actually adopted until I was 8 years old.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is making more sense because I'm like, I don't know how you do this. Like, just someone else takes you.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, it's still fishy to this day. So,
It sounds a little bit. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
no, it's okay. My siblings, well, my oldest sibling, she is about, I think, 9 or 10 years older than I was. She never accepted the fact that I was adopted. And for the majority of my life at that time of living with my adopted mom, had abused me physically and emotionally. And so to this day, we are probably going on about 18 years or so, no, maybe like 15 years of not even seeing or speaking with each other. There's always been a feeling of just never being accepted by them.
Mm.
I have another sibling too. We're a year and 4 days apart. We've had like a on and off again relationship because of my oldest sister and just because of the abuse and things like that. So I was never able to really establish a relationship with my siblings because of that. So I was kind of like the loner, and that's why I ended up leaving from there.
And you were the only adopted one?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you ended up leaving.
I think I had to have been about 14 years old. I didn't actually leave. I actually got into a fight with my oldest sister, the one that I said did not care for me to be in their family. I finally just had enough of her. And one day she just yelled out, your mom should have left you to die. Because she's always been old enough to know exactly what happened. And so she's like, you should have been left for dead. Your mom didn't want you. You're trash. And before you know it, I just lashed out and the cops arrived. And I really thought that she was going to be the one to go to jail. And instead, I actually left the room. I went from the living room where the fight happened to my bedroom. And before I knew it, two officers came in and they were reading me my rights. And I was just so shocked that me being the victim of all these years of abuse, that I was the one going to jail. And so after that, I spent some time in jail. My mom didn't get me out because she was in fear of my oldest sister. My mother's also an adoptee, and I really believe that it's because of her unresolved trauma that she really couldn't speak up because she was afraid of my sister as well and afraid of breaking up the home. And so after I left being in jail, I ended up going to live in a group home.
Sorry, I'm just a little bit speechless because this is all just, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Like you said, like you're just totally shocked. Like, why am I the one being punished here? I'm, you're living in this home where you're being abused by your older sister. And so did you ever go back to your home?
Yeah, I tried briefly. It was around, I can't remember which hurricane happened. I live in Florida. And I just remember trying my best to try to get my sister to talk to me, even though she, abused me and caused me to go to jail. For some reason, I still wanted her to love me and talk to me. It's it's typical of adoptees, this behavior.
Yeah.
Despite of what people do to us, we still want them to love us and accept us. And I just remember I kept trying, and she was nice for 1 minute, but then like a couple of days later. But that was because we were in the midst of a hurricane where it was like survival mode. And then after that, she never spoke to me again. And she also at the time was married. She married young, and she married someone who also had abused me. So it just was an extremely traumatic situation. So I ended up running away. And after that, I was homeless. And from that time till I was about 21 years old, I was basically just hopping around from house to house, living in my car, was in bad relationships where I allowed men to abuse me just as a way to survive because I just felt like I didn't have family.
Hmm. I'm thinking about what you said about your adoptive mother being an adoptee as well and her unresolved trauma. Can you speak to that a little bit more about your relationship with her?
She was actually someone who was trafficked into the US, and she was adopted by a relatively wealthy family who abused her too. She had 14 siblings. They all abused her. They had sex with her every day and they kept her in a basement. And I believe she came from Ecuador and she didn't, I think the highest grade she ever completed was second grade, and that was in her orphanage. And she never got any education. She was never properly registered in the US for living here. And I just remember her telling me that she had like this one teddy bear. No, it was like a little porcelain doll with like a white dress. And I just remember them tormenting her with that doll. And they would tell her like she wouldn't be able to keep her doll that night if she didn't have sex with them and things like that. And so I think now that I've really learned to process adoption, I've heard different stories. I believe that my mom adopting me, because it was never her plan to adopt, she saw me as that little doll. And so we have a very different relationship. It's not really a parent child relationship, and it's not like a friendship either. It's kind of like it's really like me helping to heal her because she never got that help. And I feel like in some way, she tries to protect me. She could never protect me from my sister, but she tries to protect me and kind of just hold me close in her own way. It's difficult to explain, but I really feel as if I am that doll that she held on to as she was abused by her adoptive family.
Hmm. And you said that your older sister, threw this in your face, like you should have been left to die. And so when did you know that story about you being abandoned?
I actually didn't, this actually didn't come to me or put two and two together until I went to speak at a conference in Seattle about 4 or 5 years ago. My oldest sister, we were at Kmart and she was singing this song, I know something you don't know, I know something you don't know. And as a child, at like 5, 6 years old, what is it? What is it? What is it? And she was like, you don't belong in this family. She's like, you know that you're different and you're this and you're that, all negative things. But I heard and understood what she was saying, but I didn't process it until I went to speak at this conference and we had like a healing session. I actually went as a speaker and ended up just joining this healing session just to sit in to see what it was like. And it just blew my mind because I was meant to be there because I didn't know that I was actually holding that inside of me until I was in that healing session. And it just kept playing back what she said, and then it made sense that I've known since I was 5 years old. I always knew I was different because I looked nothing like my adoptive family, but I think I tried so hard convincing myself that I do belong to this family, that I was given birth by this family. Even though, like I said, I look nothing like them. It's just a way that I just made myself believe this. But when I was actually in the group home, I don't know exactly what happened, but I believe that because my adoptive mom didn't drive, she didn't have a license. She really relied on my oldest sister. And so when I was in the group home, they called my mom to say, are you guys going to create like basically a healthy environment where she can move back home? My oldest sister answered for my mom. There was also a language barrier. My mom speaks Spanish and she really didn't speak English that well at the time. And so my oldest sister was like, no, she's not coming to get her. So it was then that the group home told me, they're like, if we can't get your adoptive mom to let you back home, then we have to send you back to the state or something like that. Or maybe they could find your birth mom. And I was just so shocked at that time because, especially now looking back, because I don't know how they had this information, although I discovered years later that the Social Security office had it. So maybe it was in a database of some sort that they had access to. But that's when it was really confirmed to me, where I was at an age where I could understand that I was adopted, in fact, despite, all these things going on in hearsay and stuff like that.
So you didn't really find out till you were a teenager, and then mentally you didn't process it till you're like just a few years ago, you said 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for going in depth in some of these really painful things. It just sounds like there is a lot of trauma in not just your generation, but going back even. Can you tell me a little bit about, do you have a connection with your birth family? Did you search for them or know them? How did you connect with them if you have?
Yes, I have. I've connected with them and reunited with them. The way I connected them with them is that I started a blog years ago, and it was back then it was yourbloodismyblood.com. And basically, it was just me journaling my thoughts on being adopted. But the header on it said, I had my photo, and then it said searching for, and then I had my birth mother's name on it. At the time, I was doing YouTube videos and just always talking about my story online. And they actually ended up finding it. My aunt was actually cleaning out her attic, I believe, and came across a journal. And in the journal, which was my birth mom's journal, she talked about giving up or leaving a baby behind or something like that. And from there, she put two and two together, and they started this search for me and what little they knew. And at that time, there wasn't too many people blogging about adoption and stuff like that. So if you put anything in it about adoption, my blog would automatically come up on the first page, or my name. And they said that they said once they found that page and my my blogs on YouTube, that they said I looked just like my adoptive mom, just like my birth mom, and I sounded just like her. And so for them, they felt like there was no way to deny that I have to be that child that they were talking about, that my birth mother was talking about in that journal. And so they reached out to me, and I just panicked, because it's one thing when you're an adoptee searching and you find your birth family, but it's another thing when they find you and you weren't ready, like the ball wasn't in your court. So I needed some time. I just felt like I was being bombarded. It's a huge family. They were all messaging me, we're your cousin, we're your sister, we're your brother, we're your aunt, your uncle, and like just emails. And the interesting thing is that I went to school. I went to high school with my cousins, and my best friend today was in quinceañera, which is like a sweet 16 of one of my cousins. Like we're really, really close. Like like that 6 degrees of separation was like 2 degrees. That's how close we all were, and
Wow.
didn't realize it. So I ended up reuniting with my birth family maybe about 3 years later. The first, or maybe I think it was maybe 2 years later. It was under tragic circumstances, and we just haven't been able to really establish a relationship because of it. And the only sibling that I really speak with is my oldest sister, and she's a lot like me. I feel like she knows when to give me my space. I don't have to explain myself, because I have upset some of my family and my biological family, because I've said I needed space, not directly to them, but I blogged about it. And so I received some messages like, fine, if you don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me, or we won't be a part of your life, the whole thing. But it's not what I meant. It's just a lot to process. But my oldest sister has been amazing. She's been everything someone would really want in a sister, but I've been struggling trying to allow her in my life and figure out where to put her in my life. And I think that's something that a lot of adoptees struggle with, how to allow someone who's basically a stranger into your life and accept them as family as much as you want to. But I still haven't been able to get over that hump, but I'm so thankful for her patience and her love.
Mhm. Again, I'm going to go back to, so your adoptive mom, you said, was an adoptee and she has unresolved trauma and things. Can you speak to that in your life as an adoptee and with All of these things that have happened in your life. My goodness, like I'm still kind of stunned here. I really didn't know much of your story. So can you talk about the effects that being abandoned and having all this adoption stuff has had on your life?
For as long as I can remember, I've always struggled with identity issues, neighborhood kids, because again, I look nothing like my adoptive family. I have a little bit more tan skin, they have whiter skin. Straight hair, I have very curly hair. So I couldn't even blend in if I wanted to. And so neighborhood kids would often be like, "Why do you look like a nigger? Why do you have nigger hair? Why do you have these features and your family has this and that?" And I just would always run away. I would run as fast as I can back home. I would run into trees or up trees. I would do anything I could to disappear because I felt like I was just different. And I didn't know what it was at the time because I wasn't accepting the fact that I was adopted. But I knew that I always just stuck out, and people have made me feel very uncomfortable about my features or the color of my skin or the texture of my hair. And I just remember, like, on a couple of occasions running home to my adoptive mom about it, and she'd always say, "Don't listen to them, don't listen to them." But the pain was already there. There was nothing she could do. She, even at that time, didn't even explain to me about, being adopted. So I couldn't even make sense of why I looked so different. I don't know how I did it back then, but I just completely ignored the fact that, I was adopted, because then that would probably make sense to me if somebody sat me down of why I look so different instead of everybody else pointing out the fact that I look so different. I also struggled with suicide my whole life. And it's a topic that's very, very dear to me. And that is like the area that I really work with adoptees, because I've struggled with it. I've tried on numerous accounts to commit suicide, with especially like taking pills and alcohol. At a young age, I developed an alcohol addiction to basically forget about everything that was going on, the abuse, verbal abuse, physical and emotional abuse. I just remember one time, and it always just sticks out to me, where I just tried to pull every single hair out of my head and just screaming in the mirror, why didn't you love me? Why don't you want me in your life? Why did you abandon me? Why did you give me up? And I just kept screaming over and over again, just trying to understand why my mom didn't want me. It was that night that I tried to take my life, and then the next thing I knew, I ended up in the hospital. And I was actually in a mental institution briefly because of it. And I remember they tried to medicate me and do all sorts of things, but I did come across a doctor in there that actually took the time to hear my story. And they actually said, "You've been through a lot." And I'll never forget it, because it was like the first time that I felt like somebody actually understood what had happened to me and what I was going through. And it's not that I was crazy or just thinking, all out of the box and all out of whack and things like that. I actually have been through a lot of things.
Isn't that first validation is so powerful? You never forget it.
Never. Yeah, definitely. It's really been the premise of my work, because I know that I'm not alone.
Um, can you tell me, sorry, what year were you born?
1984.
84. Okay, so you're just 1 year younger than me. Do you still struggle, like to this day, sometimes with suicidal ideation?
I do.
Yeah.
And this is normally nothing I would really speak about publicly, but after we lost three adoptees in 1 month back in May, and ironically, that was National Mental Health Awareness Month, I reached my breaking point. It was because I posted something about it on my Facebook page. And I just remember an adoptive mom basically yelling at me through her computer, saying, like, I have no right to speak on the behalf of adoptees and suicide, and just trying to be dismissive about the whole concept of adoptees being 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than non adopted people. And I just went into a whirlwind after that, because it's because of adoptive parents, or just anybody who just believes that statistic isn't real. It's heartbreaking to those of us that are living it, to
Mm.
those of us that are surviving the attempt of suicide that we have made, or to those that have suicidal thoughts. Sometimes, if I were to be very honest, it's Sometimes I remember like a few years ago, I wanted to be like, oh, I'll show you how real it is. I was just in that space because it's so upsetting that people think that this isn't real. And it is. And there's so many of us, and many of the adoptees I work with are actually suicide survivors or have attempted suicide at one point or another in their journey.
Hmm.
We still continue to be dismissive about this. And that's why adoptees take their lives.
Yeah. And I mean, you're being so candid with us. I really appreciate that. I still struggle to this day. Same. I still think about suicide. I wouldn't say frequently, but it's enough that it's very troubling because I'm mostly in an okay place. I have a loving husband, really supportive family. Like I'm in very good circumstances, and there's a lot of people that aren't. And so when I think about like I have access to a psychologist, I go to therapy regularly. I mean, and I'm still struggling with these things. When I think about the people that do not have the resources that I do and that are not consistently trying to take care of themselves, I mean, no wonder we have a month like May. It's so maddening.
Definitely. If I didn't have my husband, I probably don't think I'd be alive. I think after everything I've been through and dealing with suicide, I would not be here without my husband. And even working with adoptees, like to me, they're just so dear to me because it's like I know I can't give up because I have a lot of people relying on me every day
Mm,
to keep going. So I know I have to keep going. So this work is not just something I do. It's something that allows me to continue to breathe, just
mm,
to continue to live. As you spoke about, going to therapy, I actually, when we lost the last adoptee in May, immediately I realized I had a breakdown, and my husband was just like, "What is going on?" Like he's just never seen it get that bad. And I knew in that time because I said something to him, and I actually hurt him, and he's the last person in the world I'd want to hurt. I knew I had to go to therapy, and during that whole month, I literally felt like I couldn't breathe. But that one session, that one time that my therapist gave me permission to feel, it's like the floodgates just opened up and I literally felt like I could breathe again. You have no idea like how much you hold in, how much grief you're holding in and trauma you're holding in, that you just need somebody to say like, girl, you can breathe, that you can feel these feelings, it's okay.
mhm. Now, you've mentioned a lot of your work with adoptees, and can you talk a little bit about that? You said you started blogging like ages and ages ago. Oh my goodness. You've been doing this a long time. Tell us about what you're working on with adoptees.
When my blog started years ago, like I said, just telling my story and for myself, it was just an online journal. And before I knew it, like maybe a couple months in, I actually started hearing from adoptive parents saying that their child is troubled and they've always wondered why she or he is going through these issues. But by reading my blog, they could understand that it's so much deeper than what is on the surface. So they actually were beginning to understand what their child may be going through. And with birth mothers or first mothers reading my blog, they've opened up to me and would write in the comments saying that I've always wondered what my child's life might be like. I'm sorry, might be like being adopted. So it's kind of like that inside look for adoptive parents and first mothers, and also for adoptees, just trying to find community or someone that may be going through the same things that they've been going through. And actually, when I reunited with my birth family, I couldn't blog anymore. So I pretty much just shut it down. It was just such a traumatic experience. I couldn't write about it, I couldn't speak about it for safety reasons and just for my own sanity. And then I created a new blog, which is iamadopted.net. And basically, what I do is now just share stories about adoptees and their experiences and offer tips to adoptive parents. I haven't been blogging as much as I probably would like to, but that's because I'm in a rough season right now trying to make sense of everything. But I do have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com, I am adopted. And that's a very active page. There's a lot of engaging people in the triad. And basically, it's just been such great community for adoptees to speak about their experience and give insight to adoptive mothers and first mothers on what it's like for adoptees to be adopted.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that you stopped blogging after your family found you through your blog, which that's wild in and of itself. I used to blog as well when I was first in reunion with my dad, and I had to stop when reunion kind of got bumpy. We were past the honeymoon stage, and I have younger siblings, and so they were reading what I was writing and stuff, and that was just paralyzing. When we're putting ourselves out there, that's a huge deal. And I really appreciate how you make space for other people to share um, on your Facebook page, and you really encourage discussion. And I think that is so powerful, and that's how we change that narrative for, the societal narrative that adoption is all happiness and rainbows and you were saved and we should be grateful. That's how we shift the narrative to actually, there's a lot of us that have issues in a case like yourself where there was abuse and things, even after you're supposed to be in this safe family, and it's not the case. And then for me, like, I had that, supposedly picture perfect placement, but I still have issues, so it's just, it affects all of us. Now, I really am curious because you have done so much work with adoptees and adoptive parents. And on your blog, you're very openly Christian. You share a lot of scripture. I notice on your Instagram stories, you're always reading your Bible, you're reading books about spirituality. Can you talk a little bit about how faith has helped your journey?
Faith has really helped me survive and kind of make sense of things. I've been There's been numerous times where I felt like God left me hanging and just allowed me to go through a lot of bad things. But I do believe that God does have his soldiers, and he needs some people to go through the trenches. And I know it's difficult for some people to understand, but this is the way I have accepted some things in my life to be. And had I not gone through abandonment, homelessness, abuse, and having depression issues and anxiety issues, who would be there to speak to these adoptees or to other people struggling with the same issues that I have struggled with? So I have accepted that God has created me to be a disciple to help other people. But there's been some very, very significant times in my life that I know for a fact it had to have been God, because I remember when I was having a problem with alcohol, with that addiction, I would sometimes get on the road, and to this day, I'm still working on forgiving myself for it. Somehow I'd wake up in the light and not even know I was even driving or how I got there. And I know that had to have been God. And there's been times I've tried to drive off the road and end up in a safe place instead of going into a river. And I know that had to have been God. And there's been times that I've been homeless and didn't have food, and somehow a friend like from school would be like, "Hey, my mom wants you to come to dinner with us." Or I had a friend that would even bring me food, and I know that it would just be right at that one point where I had nothing, that someone would come through and bless me, or God would save me at that last minute. So I'm somebody who believes. I know some people don't believe in God, especially adoptees, because of what have happened to them. And I understand it, but I'm thankful that I've been able to get to a place where I could actually really feel him. I've kind of learned just through everything that I've gone through that it's really just been God that's gotten me through.
Mm-hmm.
But it's come with me being open to receive it and actually believing it.
So you mentioned that a lot of adoptees walk away, and I'm hearing the same thing. I hear about, it's a lot of it. It's, Christian families adopting, and then there's some adoption trauma and everything. And especially when I think when Christian couples attribute their choice of adoption and choosing this child and and that weight of gratitude, like expected gratitude and all of that, when it's put on the adoptee, like I really feel like that just pushes them away because there's no acknowledgement of the loss of the first family. There's no acknowledgement of trauma. Inside, we're feeling like, why did I get rejected? Why was I abandoned? Why was I left behind? And exactly the question you said, like, why, God? Like, why did this happen to me? And so I think that's a point where a lot of people, a lot of adopted people walk away from God, because how could God do this?
I really don't even have an answer as to why God does what he does. I really feel like that's something that each person has to seek on their own in their relationship with Jesus Christ. But I do have something against the church, many Christian churches, because of how they basically play into adoption of selling this savior dream and how we have to save the orphans and things like that. I remember being at a church down here, a mega church that has like many different campuses. And John Maxwell used to be my favorite author until he was a guest speaker at a church. And in the end, he ended up speaking about how this one young mom was pregnant and the boyfriend was in her life and wanted to be in her life, but the church basically said that it was the best thing for the baby to be put up for adoption. There was somebody in the church, there was a couple that was struggling with infertility issues. So the Lord blessed them by this girl giving them that sweet baby. And then I just walked out of the church and I cursed John Maxwell out because I was like, I can't ever read your books. I can't speak of you again because you're selling this nightmare of a dream. You're robbing this young girl of her baby, not knowing that the church could have helped her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the church's job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't understand how churches believe that the right thing is to do is to give babies to people that are struggling with infertility or that's God's will. That is not God's will. That's humans' will. That's what people want, not what God wants. I view things maybe a little bit differently, but I feel like if God wanted you to have a baby, he would have blessed you with a baby naturally. That's just stance on it. I do believe in adoption, but when you get it mixed up with God's will and God's purpose and ripping babies out of the lives of expectant mothers, especially young ones or single moms, that's not God. That's what humans want.
Oh yeah, that I think you hit the nail on the head there. That is so true. What better lie to sell to push someone out of the church? Like, I'm so there with you. And I was going to recommend this during recommended resources, but I'll just talk about it right now. My friend Steph has a blog called Bleeding Hearts, and she has been writing a few blog posts about adoption in the church and really trying to call attention exactly to that dichotomy that you're speaking about. Where is the church supporting these young mothers just because they're unmarried? I mean, okay, so premarital sex, is that the sin? And then there's a gift of a life, and we're so stuck on punishing this, sin in quotation marks, whatever your views are on that, that's fine. But there's this gift of life. And like, what is that? We're okay with having like a singles mother ministry, like if they come to church after. But if there's a pregnant teenager in your church, you can bet that your pastor is saying, you should give this baby up for adoption because you still need to go to university and have this like better life, and the baby needs a better life. And there's a lot of lies that are being sold, right? Ugh, makes
Definitely.
me
I
so
actually
mad.
had a pastor apologize to me last year
Mm,
because he was preaching that very thing.
mm,
And he said, from following my Facebook page, he's like, he just, it's like his eyes just opened up to
mhm,
everything. He's been preaching the wrong message.
mhm.
He's been preaching his own message,
Yeah.
not what God was saying to them. And I think that's what happens.
So do you have any advice for us? Like, I know you've been writing a long time, and so he's following your work. What have you been saying that has given people light bulb moments like, oh, maybe adoption isn't everything that society has told me?
I think basically it's the questions that I pose, the questions that people don't want to hear, those questions, because it encourages adoptees to speak out. And that's when the truth comes to light and adoptive parents see. I get messages all the time from people saying, or prospective adoptive parents saying, I don't want to adopt anymore. I don't like this. I don't like the anger from adoptees, or, they're in fear that their adopted child will, if they adopt a child, they'll run away from home, from their family, all kinds of things. And to me, I'm like, good, because then you're not cut out for this, because adoption isn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just encouraging discussion, hard discussion. And for me, it's putting myself out there, sharing my story so others know either how to parent an adoptee or how to identify maybe some issues that their adopted child might be going through. And that's why, most of all, I just encourage. I'm so thankful for all these platforms that we have now with adoptees speaking out, because it really provides an inside look for prospective adoptive parents and adoptive parents, because adoption agencies and adoption professionals are not teaching this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One thing I really respect about you, Jessenia, is your ability to engage and teach adoptive parents, because so many of us adoptees that are in this space, we get accused of being angry or bitter or whatever. And then we also have this resentment towards adoptive parents who are feeding us this line, like, you're angry and my kid is happy. I don't know what your problem is. But you have this beautiful way of engaging with them. And like, your heart is for that child. And you, like, it shows, it's evident to me that you really want to see, the adoption has happened already. It's done. So you really want to see those adopted children grow up and be healed from some of the trauma that they've been experiencing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Basically, I just want what I didn't have. And I wish I had that support. I wish I had somebody who understood off the bat what I was going through. And most of all, my move to be more and more candid with the people's lives that I touch is that I don't know. I lost my brother recently, and I don't know when God will call us home. My whole thing is that I want him to say, well done. And to me, well done is being 100% transparent with my life, because that's how we truly touch lives and change lives and are able to teach. And there's no greater teacher than you being 100% honest with people about your life. And I feel like that's how I've been able to teach adoptive parents on how to parent their adoptees. And sometimes I don't think I'm doing a great job. Sometimes I think I'm stirring up a hot mess dealing with them. But all I can do is be honest, because I don't know if I could deal with losing another adoptee from my community or our community. Again, knowing that we could help them, that we could have been that help, or that we could have been there for that adoptive parent. So I try, as much as sometimes some of them get under my skin because they don't want to listen, or they choose to hear what they want to hear or call names. I try to extend grace to them, and try to, sometimes even privately message them and be like, look, you don't want your child to be the next one. You don't want your child to grow up, struggling with depression or anxiety, because it pours over to every single area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just one area. It affects every part of you. And I don't want to see anybody live like that. It's hard. And I've been through it, and I'm still going through it and pushing forward and praying forward every day to make it through.
Well, I find it so interesting how even your adoptive situation wasn't that great. And your bio family sounds like, if you had been able to stay there and was safe, like, it probably wouldn't have been that great. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. So if someone comes to you and says, like, well, what would your life have been like? Like, where is this? Is there a place for adoption? I mean, I think we're totally on the same page. Infant adoption for money, that's a no-go. What are your other views about adoption?
I do believe in adoption because I'm someone who, I guess you would say, benefited from it. But I also do not believe that adoption gives a child a better life, because living the life that I've lived in, and I've only probably told you guys 10% of what I've had to go through. I'm very close to the life that I probably would have lived with my birth family, but because they grew up in Puerto Rico, the streets are a little bit different. they're a little bit more dangerous. So maybe I had a chance of survival being in the U.S., even though Puerto Rico is a part of the U.S., but it's very, very different over there. My siblings are in prison, my biological siblings have been in prison, are in prison, have been murdered, have dealt with drugs, and all struggle with depression and anxiety. So I guess I could say I escaped some of that, and I'm thankful for it. In some way, I'm not thankful or grateful to be adopted, but I am thankful that I had an opportunity, even though it wasn't much better. But being in the US, I had better opportunities. I wasn't surrounded so much around crime like my siblings were in my biological family. So I'm thankful for that. I don't believe that we should be paying 30, 40, $50,000 to adopt a child. And I get angry when I hear adoptive parents having fundraisers and spending that amount of money to adopt children, because what we do when we do that is basically tell these countries or these agencies that if we're willing to pay $20,000, they're probably willing to pay 25,000 and 30,000. And that's how the numbers continue to increase, because adoption is a business at the end of the day, and they're going to continue to try to make as much money as possible. So the more that we're willing to accept and the more that we're creating these fundraisers, they're going to continue to increase the prices of adoption. We all know where there's money, there's corruption, and that's what's happening.
I can't even believe the stories about child trafficking, that's happening because of that. If $50,000 in a different country is like $1 million. And it's really disturbing. So if you haven't looked into this, I mean, you need to. Like if you don't understand the business that adoption is and the corruption, like Jessenia said, you need to look into that and inform yourself, because it's happening today. Like, we're not talking about baby scoop. We're not talking about that kind of, like, we're like literally today, there's still babies being stolen and sold, especially in international countries. And they have families. They have families that want them. And then they're kidnapped. They're kidnapped and stolen and sold to an orphanage. They're sold to agencies. And we're bringing these children to North America and adopting them and raising them and telling them, look at this better life you had and I paid for you. Like, it's just sick. It's really sick.
Yeah, I believe yesterday I read a quote or statistic that said that 80% of what they say are orphans are actually orphans. And I find that to be very disturbing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that too. And talking about, there's still a living parent, there's still family members, relatives. And that stat about the 100 million, whatever, 180 million orphans in the world, it's a Christian organization that is pushing that number all around the churches and saying, come on, church, we're supposed to take care of the widows and orphans. Like, what are we doing? And they're not orphans. Like,
Exactly.
oh my gosh. Okay. Let's leave our soapbox behind. We are preaching to the choir here, I'm sure. But goodness, nothing gets me madder than talking about that. So I've been at this podcasting gig for a year, and I have interviewed a ton of adoptees. I speak to them in my Facebook group. I interact with them on Twitter. Now, this is like a drop in the bucket compared to how many adoptees you have worked with, Jessenia. I'm like a baby compared to you in this world. I would love it if we could just have a conversation about what are some things we've learned about working with adoptees and kind of trying to get them to get on this healing journey with us, I guess.
I have 4 things that I've learned about working with adoptees. And my first one is that there's a need for mental health counseling. And in a perfect world, I believe that when parents adopt a child, that there's a package of this adoption, that I believe that there should be like a certificate of free mental health counseling with an adoption therapist, adoption trauma therapist for the rest of their life, because it's going to be needed for the rest of their life, 9 times out of 10. Um, it's so mind blowing, because therapy can cost, I think, on the low end, like 150 to I've seen some at $275 an hour. Some of us need therapy once or twice a week, depending where we are and what, may have triggered us. Who can afford that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so expensive for some people. And that's why they don't get a lot of adoptees don't get the help they need because who can afford that price? I mean, these therapists need to live, but still, it's not fair for adoptees.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Therapy can be so expensive. And even just, is it accessible? You're talking about an adoption competent therapist. I mean, few and far between, right?
Definitely.
I love that you've got a list going on your website of adoption competent therapists. And, I've interviewed some of those on the show in the healing series. And yeah, I mean, a blank check for therapy, that sounds really good. Do you have any other ideas for people that like literally just can't afford it? What are some things that we could sort of recommend to them? I guess I'm thinking like it's tough. It's really tough. I know there are some free mental health resources in Canada. I don't know how it is in the States. I don't know how it is in internationally either. But do you have any ideas about things that we can do even if we don't have the resources to go to a therapist?
As far as therapists, even the ones that I don't know exactly how it is anymore in Florida, where my home base is, but they do have like some discounted ones, but they're not therapists that specialize in adoption trauma. So don't even try it because I've been through those type of therapists that weren't adoption competent or adoption trauma competent, and they've probably done more damage than they did good. Um, so if you can't see a therapist, I would definitely recommend reading these books because I think what's key is being able to understand yourself, understand your feelings, and to read that you're not the only one going through these things. Because sometimes we think we're crazy, that we're angry or that we're sad or that we're happy. Like we go through these roller coaster of emotions, and we can't understand why we feel like this or
Mhm.
why we are laughing when we should be crying. It doesn't make sense. So like books like Primal Wound, I forgot the title of the book. I think Laura Dennis.
Okay. Yeah, the one by Laura Dennis is Adoption Therapy Perspectives from Clients and Clinicians on Processing and Healing Post Adoption Issues.
Yes, that one. Now it's a probably for a beginner walking into adoption, it might be a little bit more difficult, but I feel like if you've got a basic understanding of the mind and maybe the effects of adoption trauma, it's a good book for you to read.
Another thing that we've talked about on the show before is going to adoptee support groups. And I
Yeah.
think, just like you said, you're reading these books like The Primal Wound, and like somebody else tell me that they're having the same feelings I am, so I don't feel crazy. So an
Yeah.
adoptee support group, hello, here are all these people who can have some of the same feelings that you do. And I'm trying to start one in my city right now. I think I have like 4 people that I've found. So if you're from Edmonton, you message me so that I can add you to my little Edmonton group so we can start something. But I had Keith on the show in season 2. I can't remember his episode number off the top of my head, but he was just talking about how he really needed a support group. And he's like, well, I'm just going to start one. So if there's not one in your area, this is your nomination. You may start that adoptee support group in your area. I nominate you.
Definitely. And Keith is amazing. He has such a great heart and he's so passionate about adoptees. I can't imagine a better person to be heading a group for adoptees.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a bundle of energy, that guy. He's so fun.
Yes.
Okay, so that was your first thing, mental health. Yes, we really need to address that. Okay, what's number 2?
My second one was community, was basically what you were speaking about. And I say that because the minute we find somebody who can understand our pain, it's like the chains just come off of us that have been holding us down. Just being able to talk to somebody who has been there before. And also to someone who doesn't understand, we'll just say to your average friend or maybe to someone in your family, it's difficult to talk about your feelings of being adopted, whether, it's hurt or depression or anxiety, things that are happening to you that you're not really aware or can understand. When you express it to an adoptee, like within seconds, it's like, boom, a snap of a finger. They're like, oh, it's okay. You don't even have to speak about it. Like they can already see our eyes welling up with tears, and they stop us in our tracks and they're like, I get it. I get it. Like, you don't have to force it out of you. If you're not ready, I get it. And that's the beautiful thing about adoptees. They get you right off the top, without you having to go talking around in circles, which I'm very guilty of with people when I'm trying to explain some things when I feel like they're just not getting it when you look at their body language. So that's why I think community is so important, because other adoptees, we understand each other and we allow each other to feel things and we give each other permission to feel things, which I think is just extremely important.
Oh my goodness. So true. So true. I've actually had, I've kind of lost count, I think, of how many emails I've had from people that just kind of discover my podcast and say, oh my goodness, this is the first person I've ever heard talk about these things. And they feel this instant connection with whatever guest that I've had on that particular episode that they've listened to and with me. And it's so true. There's just something that we just get. I mean, like, what is that? That's so crazy, because it's like, it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter your beliefs, where you're from, like which country, like any of that. It's this thing about being adopted just connects us. It's so weird. I don't know what it is. There's something about our pre-verbal trauma. I don't know. Okay. What's number 3?
Okay, number 3 is that many are afraid to tell their stories and they wait for their adoptive parents to pass away before they share their truth. And I realized with speaking with somebody last week that they're like, why is it only people that are like 40 years or older that are sharing their stories or writing books? And what I realized from reading books from other adoptees, that they disclose within their books that it's because somebody has passed away, whether it's their mother, their father, or both. But it's because they don't have to deal with that scrutiny of, them making their adoptive parents angry for them sharing their truth or upsetting people in their family. Like, you really can't share your truth until these people or your parents pass away. And I just think that's so sad. Like, even in Facebook groups, especially like public ones like mine, I have people that will, because I shut down the messaging part, so they have to find other ways to contact me. They'll say, can you ask this question? Or I want to say this, but I'm afraid that my parents might be reading this or my siblings might be reading this. Like, I just think that's so unfair, because that means you're basically walking around your entire life with these feelings inside of you with no place to let them out or to have any explanation or to receive any help, because you're concerned with what other people might be thinking in your family. So you can never really live your truth.
I have seen that so much. I really have. And here's my confession for you. My adoptive parents didn't know I had this podcast until like a few weeks ago. I finally
Oh
told
my
them.
gosh. Shame on you.
It's so true, though. We
Yeah.
are terrified of saying anything that will hurt. And for some reason, like this, you're talking about telling stories. So many adoptees don't search for their first families until their adoptive parents have died. And often then it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about looking for our truth, speaking our truth. There's a barrier there that we're just afraid of hurting our adoptive parents, I think. I think for a lot of people that is the case anyway.
Oh yeah, I think so. And it makes me think of, especially adoptive parents who have like younger kiddos. They feel they're the first ones to say, my child is happy. My child doesn't have any issues and things like that. And I'm like, oh, well, you don't see what goes on in my inbox, girl.
Uh-huh.
Like, and the majority are young adoptees that message me, especially on my YouTube videos, and they'll message me and just say it, like they'll be as young as like 11 and 13 years old, saying that I want to kill myself or I'm depressed because I can't talk to my adoptive parents about the way I feel and I need help. Can you help me? And I'm like, if you're that young, thinking about suicide and you're depressed, it's amazing how young this. How can I explain this? These feelings of depression and not being able to talk to your parents, and these feelings of wanting to protect your parents because you are indebted to them or you have to be grateful for being adopted. It starts so young.
Yeah. I mean, I'm I'm surprised that you're saying age 11. Like that surprises me. I mean, and it doesn't. It's both. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So yes, I hear the same thing. Adoptive parents like, my kid's great. My kid's great. I just what do adoptive parents need to be doing to open up those conversations with their kids?
What I recommend is that number one is that the child knows that they're adopted from the minute that they arrive in the house, that it is a talk that doesn't happen just one time, that it's continuously spoken about, that adoption trauma, the thought of it and the realness of it is introduced to the child because once a child is able to, once a child understands that what adoption trauma is, they're able to relate to it, which makes them, I feel, more inclined to speak about it or to make sense of their feelings. And when you're able to make sense of your feelings, it doesn't feel as bad because you don't feel like you're crazy. Because that was something that I've always felt. I've always felt I was crazy because I didn't understand why I was feeling happy and sad and angry and depressed and wanted to jump over the bridge, like all these different emotions. Like had I known that adoption trauma was a real thing, I would have been able to, better make sense of myself and not thought I was crazy and probably would have been better in everything that I did. It just needs to be talked about. And I think therapy needs to begin when an adoptee is a child and needs to go all the way through. And even if the child is maybe like not ready now, just let it be open for it to be a place that they could visit when they're ready.
And don't you think, I mean, I'm going to make a blanket statement here, but I think it's true. We are not going to come to our adoptive parents and open this conversation. We are not going to.
Right.
You need to do it.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the adoptive parent is in charge of saying whatever it is, every day, weekly, whatever. Like, I'm okay to talk about these things. I want to know, and it's okay. Like, it's safe. You can be curious about your first family. It's okay to wonder where you came from. It's okay to feel sad that you're not with them. Any validation and the opportunity for having that conversation, like, it's so important.
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 4.
Number 4 is we need permission. Basically what you just finished saying. Oh,
Jeez, I keep
permission.
stealing your thunder. I'm so sorry.
No, because we know this.
Yeah. Okay.
Greatest thing that my therapist ever said to me was that she gave me permission to feel. And as I said earlier, the minute she said that to me, it was like the floodgates opened up because what that did was tell me that I'm allowed to feel however I feel in that moment, tomorrow, the next day, or whenever. I could feel angry, I could feel sad, I could feel traumatized, I can feel anxious, and that if I don't want to be in certain settings, I don't have to be. If I don't want to go here, I don't have to go here. If whatever the situation might be, I have permission to not do it or to say or to feel. And I just think that's so important because as adoptees, we often do things we don't want to do or just to please other people or to make people love us. And it does more hurt for us because we're not doing it from a good place or we overwork ourselves to fulfill some type of need that is empty inside of us. But when somebody gives us permission to say, hey, like you are not okay, and it's okay that you're not okay, or it's okay to feel that way that you feel, like it's just groundbreaking. It's just chains just break off of you. You're like able to be set free. Like I said, the minute she said that to me, I just literally felt like I could breathe again. Like for months dealing with the suicide thing and the adopted community, I felt like somebody had their hands around my neck and I couldn't breathe. And it wasn't until I saw my therapist and she gave me permission to feel what I was feeling for myself, the grieving that I haven't allowed myself to do, or mourning the death of these adoptees. I never knew I really needed to do it until she said it was like basically like 1, 2, 3, you have permission. And then
Mm.
I just felt like I was able to breathe again.
That is so wise. And I have appreciated really even what you said earlier in our conversation. I'm really struggling right now, so I need to kind of take a step back. Or, I've been more quiet. I haven't been blogging as much because I need to study. Because a lot of us doing this work, it is very taxing, and we want to be doing it, and we want to be able to help adoptees and support them in whatever way we can. And our tank just gets drained, and we need to give ourselves permission as well to take care of ourselves. So here's my next true confession for you. Isn't this fun? So fun for you. I am potty training my 3-year-old, and it is the worst. That is the worst thing in my life right now. It's the last worst thing was when I potty trained my older son.
Hi.
It's killing me. It is soul sucking work. It is the worst thing about parenting so far. I mean, I just have little kids, and so my tank is getting lower and lower and lower. And then I just had this thing where within about a week, I heard about 3 or 4 different things that I was kind of excluded from. And it wasn't an intentional slight or anything, but when I heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being rejected again. And this time it was from adoptees that are my good friends who are doing this work. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dead. Like, I can't do this anymore. I was ready to just stop. I'm like, not even my own people, my own adoptee people will include me. You've got to be kidding me. And so I had a total meltdown. And that is a direct result of me not giving myself permission to take care of myself and being like, you know what, Haley, you're in a season of potty training, which is the worst. And maybe you should just focus on your kid and cleaning up all the poop, so much poop. I can't even. So yes, even us working with adoptees, we really need to have that permission too. There,
Yeah.
wasn't that fun? I know you heard more about me than you needed to know, but
Oh no, I love those stories.
oh, so good.
That's cute. Oh yeah, but to add on to that is that us feeling like we're excluded from things, especially in the adoptee community. And I only say this because I've obviously been doing this for so long, but I've had adoptees come to me and say, why didn't they ask me to do this? Or why haven't I done this? And it's like we take it super personal, especially in the adoptee community. And it's even in groups. And I think what I will add that to that is that all of us have different perspectives on adoption. Sometimes we relate, sometimes we don't, and we always arrive to in our beliefs based off what happened to us or around us. And so we see adoptees get kicked out of groups or removed from groups because of what they believe in. And I just think that it can be draining to feel like you don't belong somewhere when you're struggling to try to belong somewhere and to be embraced in a community. So I think that we have to kind of work on not taking things so personal for whatever reason. That's just something that I've learned. And also that those of us, like when I went through that episode where I had to throw myself back in therapy, I just I thought about you and I thought about a few other people that I know are like hardcore in this. And I'm like, I know I'm not the only one. I know they've got to be going through it too. And all I could think was, I really hope that all of us are in therapy and stay in some sort of therapy, because we pour out to people all day long. And somehow we manage to forget our own feelings, or we don't take care of our own selves because we're busy taking care of other people.
Mm.
And one thing I'm guilty of is, feeling like I said earlier, because I just feel like I have such an attachment to this whole thing because it's my way of kind of surviving and feeling like I have a purpose to continue to live. I will keep going and going and going, and until I just have a massive breakdown. And I pray my husband's always around because I don't know what will happen then. But self-care is so important. That was another thing that I've learned when I was speaking at that conference a few years ago. We've got to take care of ourselves and give ourselves permission to walk away or say, not right now, or I can't do this, and it be okay. Even if
Mm-hmm.
people are going to get upset, even if people in our community is going to get upset with us,
Mm-hmm.
got to take care of ourselves.
That's so true. And, Jessenia, the other thing about we're all going through this together and we're all doing this work. And so when one of us steps away, somehow the others just fill in the gap, right? It's okay for me to take a week off Twitter because you'll be there to tweet, or someone else will be there to, take care of the ones that are struggling in that moment as well.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for all of you guys because I felt like years I was doing it there was like maybe three of us like back then. One of them dropped off, but now I can feel like, whew, y'all are here and you can fill in the gap when I'm like, I cannot do this today or for this whole week or a month. Like, I'm just so thankful because I really feel that change is coming. I see changes in the community, in the atmosphere of adoption culture. I see the change. And that's what I want people to know, that we are being heard, because I get these emails from adoptive moms or adoptive parents or even expectant mothers that either choose to parent because of what they've learned from us, or those that are now better equipped on how to parent their adoptee because of us.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This discussion was so good. There is so much good stuff in here. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we move on to recommending our resources?
I do want to thank you if I can. And
Okay.
I'll tell you why, because I've heard of people wanting to start podcasts for so many years, and I've seen a couple happen, and then they quit like within the next like couple months or maybe like a year. But there's never been a podcast like yours, and I could literally listen to it on my me time or when I'm walking or when I'm driving, and it's just been such a help. It's touched me in so many ways I can't even really even articulate it in this time, because I could just spend all day just listening to the same one over and over again just to make sure I got it down in my spirit and down in my brain and in my heart. It's helped people around me. I have other people listening to it with me in the car, and they're like, "Oh, so that's why you do this, or why, you act like this sometimes." And it's just teaching so many people, and it's so needed. And the ones where you have therapists on there, like, oh, Haley, people that can't, like we spoke about earlier, people that can't afford therapy, you are basically giving free therapy, because it's people are learning from it. They're learning that everything that therapist had to share, you're asking the right questions, you're keeping the flow going. People's lives are My life has changed by listening to a couple of them, because I've been able to understand myself with new eyes and new feelings by listening to those podcasts. So I just want to thank you for doing these podcasts and sticking with it, even when I'm sure there's some days you just feel like you can't, but you still do. So thank you.
Okay, well, I thought I'd get through without crying today, but no. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And I had no idea. I had no idea the impact the podcast would have. I'm so grateful to be and so humbled, to be the one to bring these voices to the forefront. It's not me. It's totally not just me. Like, it is it's me joining up with this powerful movement, and I have so many brave guests just like yourself. You're sharing your truth, and some of the things we talk about are so scary and deep, and things that people haven't said out loud before. Just like me, right? It's so worth it if just one person hears and thinks, oh, you know what? I'm not alone, and I can stick it out. Okay. Well, let me gather myself up. Let's do our recommended resources. So, like I said earlier, I wanted to bring you this blog that my friend Steph is doing called Bleeding Hearts. And she is an adoptee, and she's also a mother of loss. And she has such a unique perspective from being in both of those camps, I guess. And she's been writing this series, like I said, about the church and that stuff with adoption, the church promoting adoption, and just trying to shift the focus. And she's such an amazing writer. I love what she's doing. And so I really encourage you to check that out. And number 2 is another podcast. Damon Davis started his podcast, Who Am I Really? And he interviews adoptees who have searched and are in reunion. And so his focus really is talking about how did adoptees search, what kind of methods did they use? You hear over and over now, right? It's DNA testing, and sometimes he'll talk to Baby Scoop era and the things that they had to do before the internet, And they're shorter. I think they're usually around 20 to 30 minutes. And it's just another way of getting adoptee voices heard. Yeah, it's Damon Davis doing Who Am I Really? And I will link to that show in the show notes. Have you seen that podcast yet?
I haven't, but I'm ready to find the notes in the bottom.
Well, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you even sooner so that you can check it out. Okay. What did you want to recommend to us today, Jessenia?
My first recommendation is Adoptee Restoration from Deanna. I believe her last name is pronounced Schroeds.
Yes.
She's a pastor and adoptee. She has a book called Worthy to Be Found, and she has a second book. I haven't read the second one yet, but she comes with a faith perspective on adoption and being an adoptee, and I just find her teachings to be on point. She calls the church out many times, and she talks a lot about in her blogs about what the church should be doing and what they're not doing for mothers and for adoptees. And I love her for that because I believe the overall, I guess, consensus of the church is place the baby for adoption if you're not married. She speaks against that. And in her book, Worthy to Be Found, I read it probably when it first came out, so it's not really fresh in my brain. But I do remember the book giving me the sense of permission as well. Now that I really know what permission looks like, of being found and feeling the feelings that we have. And she also talked about the importance of mental health therapy in her book. So I really do. I think especially for Christian adoptees, they should really read her blog, and maybe to adoptees that were once Christians and have turned away from the church, that they know that to not blame the church, blame the people that are in the church, that has nothing to do with God. You will find those answers, a lot of those answers and thoughts in her blog.
Yeah, yes, I second that. We've even talked about her blog on the show before, and I've read her books as well. And this lady walks the talk. Did you see her year with her great niece? I mean, talk about family preservation. I won't go into the whole situation because I don't know exactly what she's left public or not, but her family really came alongside another family member that was in a difficult situation, and they made it possible for this family to stay together. And I thought this is such a good example of what we should be doing. And so she is writing the truth and she's walking it out, which thumbs up in my books. Like, that's a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Now you have something else for us.
How does it feel to be adopted? I love that Facebook page, but only adoptees can comment, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Pamela Karanova runs it, and she's got some rules and she administers them.
Yes, and she's bomb. I love her. I love her grace. I love her love. She does a great job navigating that group, and I love her blogs as well.
Absolutely. I got the chance to meet her in Indiana at the conference in April. I want to say April. We were roomies, and I was,
Oh,
I just love
lucky.
her so much. Yeah, I am lucky. It was fantastic to meet her in person. And again, talking about self-care, she walked away from adoptee land for a brief time because she really needed to do some self-care. And so I stewarded her pages for her for, I don't know, like a few months. And my goodness, like the work she has put into this page, just like you, she's been doing it for a number of years. And you can tell the care she has for adoptees, her passion, and absolutely agree with those things that you said. She is just a really powerful woman, and I so appreciate her work in the community.
Definitely. I feel like her and I doing the work that we do, I feel like if I were to say anybody is anything like me, it's her. Just like if I could trust anybody like to take over my page, it would be her. But I wouldn't give her that any more work than I'm sure she has going on. But she's really good. Like it's hard
Mhm.
responding to people and doing it with such love and sometimes being in the middle and trying to when fights break out, how to be the admin of those things. She just does it perfectly. She's good for it.
I literally don't know. I wouldn't be able to do it long term because there was some days I'm like, I don't even know. What is with you people? Why are you doing this on the
Yeah.
wall? Like,
Oh
I,
yeah.
I don't have it. I have it in me to podcast. You guys are all over Facebook. That's fantastic. Okay, you've got one last thing, and I know what it is, and I'm really excited.
Oh, she is like my superhero and she doesn't even know it. I throw little tidbits at her sometimes in my comments, but she has no idea how much she's impacted me because I read her book at one of the most painful, probably the most painful seasons of my life of being adopted. And that's Anne Heffron. I didn't know anything about her when I bought her book. It just seemed like she just boom, like surfaced on the scene. And I don't know what told me. I was like, let me just buy this book. And within like the first few pages, I was just captivated. But because I was in such a rough season of dealing with like suicidal thoughts and just a depression, I couldn't get through it. So I would take some time off and then I'd pick it back up again. I had to, like, it's just something in me was like, pick the book up again. And then I put it back down, then I put it back up again. And then it just literally took over my world. Like the book was everywhere I went. And what was so funny is because I'm such a dessert junkie, and I'm assuming she is too, because I would tweet, I'm at Starbucks or I'm at this coffee shop with a cake and a cinnamon roll in her book. And we would read it. I mean, I would just be reading it. And the things that she shared were just so candid and, in a sense, reminded me a lot like me. And sometimes, just to read, a, read the words of someone just being so real, it's another sense of somebody giving you permission to feel
Mm-hmm.
those feelings that you have. And so I literally felt myself like slowly being set free from certain things. And the whole concept of ride or die, I'm like, God, I wish I had what she has so I could do the same thing because it's so true. Like, I feel like if we're able to really tell our truth, we will be set free. And I
Mm-hmm.
admire her so much for that. I mean, I would have never thought looking at her, and people say this to me too, but I would have never thought looking at her that she would have gone through what she's gone through, met the people that she's met through. And actually, now that I think about it, now that there's certain parts that are coming back to me, I think what I love about her most, like I don't know her, but what I feel like I know about her is that she just loves you for who you are. She's like a come as you are type of person, and she doesn't judge people. And I feel like I could say that because of some of the characters she talked about in her book. Like people would I never thought by looking at her she probably would have hung out with by the description of the people she made in the book. But I was like, oh, so that means she would hang out with me. Like like I'm okay because I'm a big mess and I've been through a lot of things and done a lot of bad things. But she would sit next to me and be like, Jessenia, it's okay. Like it is okay. You just be you and say your truth. And I just love Anne, and I hope, Anne, if you're hearing this, that I get to meet you someday, and that we could one day tell my story. Because I just think that your words, the way you tell them, it brings a new reality to adoptees of giving us permission to tell our truth and to be us and to be free. And I think that's what every single one of us basically need, especially those that are struggling. We need to be free from what we're feeling. And she gives that to us with not even a care in the world about what we're thinking or what we've been through.
Well, I, again, have had the privilege of meeting Anne, and she has become a really dear friend. And everything that you said about her is absolutely true. What's in her book, like she is the same in person, in her book. She is consistent. She is a lovely, lovely person. And I've plugged this book, I don't even know how many times on the show. So yes, you're hearing it again, but that's because that's how good it is. It
Oh
is,
yeah.
it is literally like being in the mind of an adoptee. It's so different because she jumps around and it's just, this is what her brain works like. This is what so many of us, this is how we think.
That's a good point that you said that, how she does, like in the book, like you'd be like over here one minute and then the next page you'd be over here. And that is like, I mean, one of my biggest fears, as I've told you before, is like sharing my story, because sometimes I feel like it's just one big jumbled up mess that I can't figure out how to tell. And that's okay. Many of us are in that space, but she knows how to tell it.
Yeah, and she and her passion is for people to tell their stories. She's so gifted. I love her. Love her to bits. And you said if you're hearing this ad, she will for sure hear it 100%. She'll probably listen multiple times. So don't worry, she will hear you. Well, Jessenia, thank you so much for your time. I have loved talking with you. I feel like we're best friends from afar, even though we don't really talk that much online, but I don't know. I've admired you for a long time. So it was such an honor to get to hear your story and to have you share about your work with us.
Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you for this opportunity. And whether you know it or not, this really is a push that I need. I understand that I need to take my time, but I just need to be surrounded around people that are doing similar, or if not the same work that I'm doing, and continuing to build community, because I can't do this myself, but because of people like you and other adoptee advocates, it just makes my journey a lot easier. And to know that I'm not alone and that I'm not fighting this alone, this battle of adoptee rights. So thank you.
Definitely not alone. Definitely not alone. How can we connect with you online?
You could find me on my website. That's www.iamadopted.net. And I also have a blog tab. You could click on it to read my blogs. You could also find me on facebook.com/iamadopted. We have lots of great conversations, lots of truth being told, lots of learning going on in that group. And you could also find me on Twitter every day, all day, because I never sleep.
I love Twitter. Sleep
Me
is
too.
sleep is for weak people.
Right. We are strong. So that's at twitter.com/iamadopted.
Oh, that's so perfect. And I also never know what time of day you're going to be on Twitter, since you live in different places.
Yeah. But don't worry, I'm always awake somehow.
I have so much
Oh,
trouble sleeping too. I don't know. Anyway, thank you. It's been such a delight talking to you.
thank you, Haley.
You can follow all the Adoptees On podcast news and happenings on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and on our website, adopteeson.com. I will be back with all new episodes starting September 15th. And I have to pinch myself because I can't even believe who I've gotten to interview already. So much good stuff coming your way. I want to thank my incredible patrons who have literally made it possible for me to continue bringing you this podcast. A giant thank you to each and every one of you who've partnered with me to share adoptee voices around the world. I couldn't do it without you, truly. If you are passionate about helping adoptees and want to move our voices forward, come and partner with me. Adopteeson.com/partner has all the details. I take monthly pledges that help to pay for the cost of hosting and producing the show for you, and I have some great thank you gifts for you. So adopteeson.com/partner. Last, but absolutely not least, would you tell one person about this podcast? The next time you're with your adoptee support group, or your therapist, or your adoptee friend, or you're in your online adoptee group, would you share the show? Tell them why it's a must listen and let them know exactly how you like to listen to podcasts. Do you listen while you're commuting, working out, walking your dog, washing the dishes? Share the show and tell them how amazing and portable podcasts are. I love podcasts. Can you tell? Friends, thank you for listening. Let's talk again on Friday, September 15th. I'm so pleased to welcome back to Adoptees On and Heffron.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you. I was hiking today and I was thinking about you because I was thinking that it's been more than a year since your show, right?
Yeah, July 1st was my 1-year anniversary.
Yeah, and I was thinking that I could not imagine my life without your show. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh my goodness. Yep. That's so sweet. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question before we start? Because I just want to know what the answer is. when you started this podcast, what were your hopes? What did you hope to create?
I was looking for an adoptee podcast. I needed some support. I was looking around to hear what other people were going through like me, and I couldn't find it. All I could find was podcasts that supported adoptive parents or prospective adoptive parents to adopt. And I was like, well, this is not for me. And so I just wanted to fill that void. I just love hearing people's stories. I'm an introvert and I love talking one-on-one with people about deep stuff. I hate the fluff. I can't small talk. And so when I was thinking back to all the podcasts I listen to like, I'm too embarrassed to even tell you how many podcasts I've subscribed to.
You've said it once before, so I know.
Oh, no. Okay. Don't say. I'm going to beep it out if you say it.
I'm pretty sure it's in the hundreds.
I'm going to have to beep that.
I'll start swearing.
Oh, well, I was thinking back to all the podcasts I listen to, which is I'm definitely only single digits, double digits, maybe triple. And and the things I loved about them. And I just was like, I could do this. And it's kind of how I thought it up, but I never expected it to have the reach it's had. I never expected. I get people emailing me and direct messaging me every single day saying it's changed their life. And that just blows my mind. I never expected that.
When people say that to you, I'm curious because I get people write to me about my writing, and in a funny way, I don't believe it.
Oh, no, I know. Me too. I'm like, what do you mean it changed your life? What do you mean this is the first time you've heard these things? And now that I've been immersed in it for a year, I have talked to so many adoptees and I live in adoptee land. But for some people that find me, like literally, I've had a couple people tell me, oh, I was just kind of looking around in iTunes and I just kind of stumbled on your show and started listening. And I was like, whoa, I can't believe someone else thinks these things. Like they had literally never heard anyone else say those things out loud. And so when I think about it that way, I'm like, okay, well, that could be life-changing the first time anyone's ever validated your feelings before.
It was life-changing for me. I remember I was in a parking lot walking towards this hike I do all the time when I don't remember how I found your podcast, but I remember I did find it, and it was Carrie was the first one, and I listened to it as I hiked, and I was in shock. And I had already written my book, but I didn't know. So I had just found out that there was things to say about adoption, but I didn't know. I wasn't sure that people were listening. I didn't know that I would have an audience. And so to listen to you, listen to someone else tell her story, I couldn't get enough. I think that first hike I listened to Carrie, Holly, and Maeve, and that was maybe all that you had done. And then I just waited. I would wait every Friday for my hike because you made space for these people to feel important and heard. And I've talked to maybe 4 or 5 people that you've interviewed, and everyone mentions that you hold this space. And so as an adoptee to hear that, I get to hear the stories, right? Which is wild enough because, like you said, I thought I was alone in my story. And then I get to hear someone listening. It's so healing. And now I take it for granted. I just wait for Friday, and then I get kind of antsy when you're late.
When I'm late.
Yeah, like sometimes it's not there. I'm ready to hike early in the morning.
Okay.
And it's
Now,
not
my last episode was on perfectionism, and I confess that I thought I was a reformed perfectionist, but truly
I heard
I'm
your tone.
not.
Late.
Listen, I have never been late. It has been up at midnight Eastern or 1 a.m. Eastern every single time. So I don't know what you're
On
talking about.
Thursday? Oh, maybe I
Friday
was
morning. Maybe your internet
Really?
is bad. Don't blame it on me.
You're gonna blame my internet on the fact that you were late?
I was not late, I promise.
That's so great because actually, that's great news. It's my phone must be busted. Well, that's good. That sounds like there's a lot of pressure for you, but I'm so happy that you're never late. So has this, for you personally, how are you a different person after having done this show or not a different, I guess you would just be more of yourself, really. Here, I'll just ask you a question and answer it at the same time.
Okay, well, first of all, I didn't know this was going to be an interview where you're interviewing me.
Can't help it. This is what happened.
It's fine. I can talk about myself. This is very hard.
And if you beep out a bunch of personal stuff about yourself, I'm just going to blog about it.
Oh, shut up.
So go ahead.
Well, maybe I'll cut that stuff for just my Patreon supporters.
Maybe I'll do my whole blog in capital letters.
Oh, God.
No, but serious.
Well, when I started the healing series, I didn't realize how far I needed to go, how many things were really, really still affecting me. I've done a lot of work. I mean, I've talked about it before. I've been in counseling for a long time. Even in the state of the reunion that I'm in with my dad and my siblings and his wife and everything, like, it's really good. And even still, I have all this stuff. And so every time I'm interviewing one of these therapists and they're saying this stuff, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have more work to do? Come on. Like,
yeah.
So I found that, like, actually kind of frustrating because I was like,
yeah.
I thought I was, you know, I'm always moving in the right direction, but I thought I was further ahead. So I've definitely uncovered a lot of things that still need work. And actually after finishing up season 1, I was so drained. I mean, I think you get that I have immense empathy, and
right.
that's just a personality trait. It's not something, it's just who I am. And so I really, really took on people's stories and their hurts, and it was very heavy, and I had to just be like, okay, I need a break. But I actually have done really, really well in season 2 and doing the healing stuff because I have found such joy doing the work of editing and getting the listener feedback and feeling like, oh my goodness, I am literally doing this for a reason and a purpose. And so somehow that has helped me to not take everything onto myself, but it's more like I interview and I listen, and then, you know, I close my computer and I can put it away. Because I know I'm sending off their voices for someone else to hear, for you to hear. And somehow that has made it easier. I can't believe how much I love doing it, though. Honestly, Anne, it's really surprised me.
What do you love? Tell me about what you love.
where else can I ask people these deep, intimate questions that they've maybe never shared with anyone else?
Yeah.
And they answer,
Yeah.
and they're not offended. And in fact, some people, like, you can tell when they're like, I am being heard, and people really do want to know me. And I think we spend so much of our time creating the persona and we've talked about it before, the perfectionist, and putting on this facade for people they'll love this. They'll love me if I look like this or I say these things. But to really be known and for that person that I'm interviewing to feel like I'm actually really getting to know them, that's so special.
It was special for me. I mean, to be on your show, I've been thinking a lot about that because I also have been surprised. I thought after I finished my book, I was done. And then I just kept getting more triggered. I saw a little baby the other day and I kind of lost it. And it comes out of nowhere. And I'm starting to think that, I'm thinking about the book, The Primal Wound, and as adopted people, we're told often by other people how to feel or what we feel, and so part of it is I try to fight. I say, well, I don't have a wound. I don't want to be wounded. But the fact is, I act like I'm wounded and I hurt, but I keep trying to get better. And it occurred to me just today that what if I just let myself be the wound? But I try not to focus on the story of the wound. And instead, I try to create to show other people and myself what the wound feels like. And so for me, it's writing or drawing or actually collaborating with other people and talking about adoption, right? And just getting out of the standard narratives of this happened and then this happened and then this happened. It's, well, what are you going to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And my theory is that my brain is different because I'm adopted. And so trying to normalize it might not work. And it just makes me feel bad about myself. But talking to you about it, I'm not in pain, right? I'm curious. And I love the curiosity about adoption instead of thinking about blame or name calling or anything. It's just, well, what am I going to do with this brain and this story, and how can I help other people not suffer the way I suffered because nobody was speaking the truth to me,
Mm-hmm.
or listening really, right? Because a lot of people are just afraid of pain or wounds that they can't see, that don't make sense to them.
And I know you and I we have both talked to a lot of adoptees at this point in our adoption land careers.
Yeah.
And it's not even just so much that people maybe didn't listen to us or we didn't feel heard. Often we didn't even know what we were trying to say.
No. And I still don't. I mean, I was stuck in traffic the other day and I was thinking, how do I feel? And I was thinking, I have no idea. Like, I don't know how I feel. And I thought, well, okay, try to put a name to it. And it's hard because after so many years of numbing out, that's work, but that's pretty cool, right? It's like, okay, well, how do I feel? Okay, I'm annoyed. Okay, well, that makes me more real because I can name my feelings. Now I can call up Haley and tell her, hey, Haley, I figured out how I feel. I feel annoyed. And you'll get it, right? And then we'll laugh. And then the day goes on instead of numbing out and going to get an ice cream cone or going to TJ Maxx and buying a new towel so I can feel something.
We don't have TJ Maxx up here, but I imagine they have very nice towels.
No, it's cheap stuff for. Everything has a sale tag. That's
okay.
Yeah. Mars, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on a budget.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, one of my things I really enjoy, here's my true confession for today's episode, is I really like scary movies. I don't know why. It makes me
What?
feel something. I know, it's so weird.
Are you serious?
Okay, but
What?
listen,
Tell me about that.
I was looking for something to watch the other night, and I started watching this show, and it was terrible, whatever. But in the end, like, the killer is like an adoptee who's like goes to kill her like first mother. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I can't even watch a
What?
scary movie anymore. And it's like
Oh
Adoption
my
Land is there
gosh.
too.
Well, do you know that when I had come back from writing my book and one night I was so overwhelmed by adoption and I was crying and I decided to watch my favorite show, The Chef's Table. And so I just picked an episode. I picked one that was in San Francisco. And in the first minute, the chef was on it and she said, "I'm adopted." And I just started sobbing. But I sent her my book and she sent me the nicest note. So it was worth it. But it is everywhere.
Thanks for living in Adoption Land with me. I know you try and escape every couple weeks, but I guess you're here now.
I am here, and do you know what? The beauty of adoption is the people that I've met. It doesn't, like this year, since facing how I'm affected by adoption. I mean, I can't imagine not knowing you. I can't imagine not having heard these stories that I've heard. And I think part of it, this next year for me is going to be about learning how to celebrate what used to cause me great grief, because I do think that as a community, we are in an amazing group of people, truly superheroes, funny, so sweet, so loving. Yeah, so I pick adoption. I'm all right.
I have to agree. I mean, the audience that has built up around Adoptees on, incredible people, really incredible. So many giant hearts, generous, and just, I have emails of like, hey, how can I help out? And hey, how can I start a support group in my area? And hey, like amazing people. Just it blows me away.
Yep, truly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but we're lucky.
How much do you want me to beep of you on here?
I guess all of it. Why don't you just say this is Anne and then just do one long beep? It won't be the first time.
Okay. Before I say goodbye, I want to tell a story about you and your cursing. I was at my church with tiny children all around me, and you started texting me the F word. And I was like, I can't, they are singing songs about how much they love Jesus right now, and you're texting me the F word.
Well, what's funny is today, I put this on Facebook just now. I was driving and someone was bothering me and I meant to wave to him and I gave him the finger by mistake. I mean, it just popped up. And I was like, oh my God, I just gave this guy the finger. Like, I can't fix this.
Oh my gosh. We live the opposite life.
Maybe you could do a show. I think, the Adoptees, I'll listen to Pam's show on Adoptee Rage again.
It just comes out sideways anger. Even when you mean to wave to someone, you're just flipping them
straight up and down. Well, I love you, Haley.
Oh, I love you too. Okay, let me ask you one question. During during season 2 and the healing episodes, what is one or two things that really stood out for you?
Every time I hear Leslie, I get super excited because I did EMDR with her. And so I I have to tell you, I just flash onto our sessions, and those changed my life. So I just get excited about Leslie. And then for Pam's, the anger, I think it was just I felt like after years of going to therapy and feeling that it wasn't working, the short sessions that you did, I felt like were directly giving me tools that I could put in my tool belt. I mean, I'm still processing them. I'm going to have to, because the first time you just hear it kind of in shock. And I don't even know how many of my behaviors I've actually changed. I think I will listen to them probably like 8 or 10 times to fully absorb them. The last one that Pam did was phenomenal. I can't listen to it enough. I'm trying to get everyone to listen to it.
I know, they're incredible. Like these women are incredible, and
Yep.
I have learned so much. And I think I maybe shared this with you before, but when I'm editing, I'm just focused on making sure everything sounds good and I making the cuts in the right places and all that stuff. And then on Friday mornings, always at the right time, it's there. It downloads to my phone. Perfectly fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
We must have different carriers.
Yeah, well, I live in Canada, so.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's probably a 6-hour delay.
Right. So I listen again just to make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
And then I listen, and the perfectionism one in particular, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't remember her saying any of these things. Like, I heard it for the first time, and I'm like, wow, I really have a lot to learn here. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've listened to it 3 times, and each time it was brand new.
Yeah, too many good things to process.
Yeah, and it's free. I mean, you will actually, I mean, adoptee suicide is a real problem. Adoptee depression is a real problem. And if someone's out there listening to and speaking to adoptees and making them feel important, I mean, that's invaluable. Yeah.
Well, I need to thank you, Anne, because you are one of my absolute biggest cheerleaders. And every time I turn around, you are sharing the show on Facebook. And so thank you. Thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
I really appreciate
Thank you for
that.
doing this. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at your book right now, your face on the back cover. It looks at me when I'm doing interviews.
Oh, it loves you. Can you believe my birth father sent me an email listing all the errors that are in that book? So that's why I've kept them.
Look at how lucky you are to be adopted. Oh my gosh.
I know. Who else can have that? Some guy who won't meet me will send me a list of my errors. Happy Father's Day.
Well, okay, so perfectionism as an episode, Pam and I were texting, and like she wouldn't listen to it yet because she was nervous.
Oh, and it's so good.
I know, but then I was like, well, I left some stuff in that I didn't know for sure if she was okay with it or not. And then and I even talked about my dad and stuff.
Yeah.
And Saturday morning he phoned me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what did I say? Because he doesn't usually phone me. We usually text like Sunday morning. He'll phone me occasionally, but it's not usually. So I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And it was nothing to do with the podcast. It was a completely unrelated. We're going camping next week. And so it was about camping. But I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
After listening to that episode, a friend texted me and she said, I have something I want to ask you. And I panicked. And my heart said, I screwed up somehow and she doesn't like me anymore. And she wrote, could you buy me some milk?
Do we just live in fear?
I know.
We literally do.
I know. It's just it's part of the luck.
Wow, we're so lucky to have found each other. That part is true.
Oh my gosh, that part is so true. Yeah, you make me laugh more than almost anybody.
I need more people in my life that will give me constructive feedback, because you're just a yes man. Like,
Well, maybe if you did something stupid, I would have some constructive feedback.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, come on. Ask any of my friends, they'll tell you. I'll give constructive feedback. Only it's not really constructive. It's just feedback.
Hey, tell me about your new Ride or Die via Skype.
Oh, I started doing them one-on-one with people on the phone, and then a group a group of about actually 6 adoptees from Florida. We did a Skype, and there's something about the Ride or Die. It's so I can't I'm not good at pitching it, because it's 30 years of me not being able to tell my story, and then I finally told it, and I figured out what was in my way. And so I just figured out these exercises to have people do to help clear their own voice, so that they can feel empowered to speak or to write. And I haven't had, every single time I do it, I think maybe this time it won't work. And every time I see it in people, they feel more themselves. I think I was just put on this planet to help people figure out who they are and see their gifts and help them tell their story. And it's so simple, and I just do it over. It's like you with your interviews on Adoptees on. I mean, I love it more than anything, because I see the I see the gifts in people that often they don't see in themselves. Even if I don't know them, I don't know how this happens, but I just do. And isn't it fun to help to listen to people, and because you just love them, right?
It's the
I mean,
best. Yeah.
it's the best.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that.
No.
Yeah. I'll do it for you sometime.
I wonder if anyone is listening to you speak about that and thinking, I am feeling stuck in this area. Maybe this would be a good fit. So
It is a good fit. Yeah. It's I know how to do it now. Yeah. It's so fun. And it's also, I just can't believe, I mean, I went to school for creative writing. I taught writing for 20 years, and I just didn't get it. And it wasn't until I basically locked myself with myself in a room by myself for almost 3 months, and I just faced it down. And then I figured out what was getting in my way. And so now I learned how to push myself. So now I know how to push other people in a really polite, non-swearing way.
So you're telling me you don't curse at all if you're giving one of
No,
these
I
sessions?
can't ever say that. Yeah, I don't. I'm from Boston. The F word is like cereal. It's just everywhere.
I know it's in my messages in my phone right now.
And it loves you.
I always know it's you if there's an F word in the text.
I have mixed feelings right now. I may learn a new word. I'm going to start using a new word. I'm not sure what it is.
Like a worse one?
No. Just a lovely one.
Oh, okay.
Like something that will make you laugh instead of cringe.
I don't cringe. I find it very amusing.
Okay. Well, something that makes you fired. I'll use the H word, Haley.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So fun talking to you.
Yeah, you too.